Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum. My name is Citizen Strife, and I will preface this week's podcast by saying that I am a little under the weather, so if you definitely hear something, I'm getting over a cold. Not quite there yet, but I'm going to trundle along because that's what I do. And this one shouldn't take all that long, so I should be able to get in and get out before anything's bad. But hey, better today than I was yesterday, so that's always an improvement. Anyway, I've been kind of dabbling back and forth between JRPGs and the more retro-style games. And again, we're going to go back into the retro wheel, and we're going to talk about one of the most iconic games. Last time we talked about games, we talked about Zelda. Well, this time, we're going to talk about Sonic. And when talking about Sonic the Hedgehog, I think it's important to go back to where it began, not so much where it is now. Because really, Sonic's fandom doesn't really extend past those initial fervor days of 1991 through 95. It really doesn't. I know there are fans of adventure, and some of the more modern games are definitely, good to an extent. I mean, Generations, Mania, and whatever, but the groundwork was laid in those first three games. And which one you consider the best is usually between 2 and 3. But if you're going to start talking about Sonic, you kind of have to start from the beginning and work forwards. So that's what I'm going to do. And you can't really understate the importance that Sonic had, because Sonic was everywhere. The game came out and was such a massive hit. You had two different afternoon and morning cartoons. I think a lot of people, myself included, have a bigger fondness for Saturday morning because it's a lot darker. Robotnik is a lot less of a dork, and its tone is just a lot more serious. There's a lot more going on in Mobius, and it really fleshes out what Sonic is. Not really what Sonic is, but what his world is. Because Sonic as a character doesn't really change much. You kind of have to have a good Robotnik to make Sonic worthwhile, and then everything else around him just kind of flows in the ether. It's dependent on how the games are, the cartoons are. Like Sonic Boom is more of a irreverent comedy than anything else. It's not really about a story per se. Those original Saturday morning cartoons were very serious, very dystopian, and it's something people responded to. The adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog were fine in their own way, but everybody can attest that they were meant for kids. And I was 8. I was 8 when it came out. I watched the hell out of those shows. But again, I'm not going to confuse that for high art or anything. It was meant to be a joke comedy for half an hour. It worked just fine. I don't think Sonic the Hedgehog, well, the Adventures is going to be like anybody's top 10 cartoon or anything, but things like Sonic Says and That's No Good, things like that, those were daily occurrences. Jaleel White being Sonic is just a thing. We accepted it. That was what it was. And it all stems from the video game itself coming in and not necessarily taking over for Mario. I do think it succeeded in that way. But Mario and Sonic have always been kind of neck and neck because Sonic came in and did what Mario could not, did what Nintendo could not do. I don't think Sega Genesis as a system was as good as a Super Nintendo, but it still had a serious back catalog. But it is bolstered so much by Sonic and the drop-off, I think, from everything else. I mean, you do have things like Streets of Rage, and, well, I liked Toe Jam and Earl, but other people would say, well, this game, and this game, and this game, Road Rash, or whatever, the Phantasy Star games. I'll get to Phantasy Star when I get to Phantasy Star. As an RPG fan, I have to go there. But as far as Sonic goes, he is what Sega is. Just like Mario is what Nintendo is, but Nintendo has Zelda to fall back on, Metroid to fall back on, Kirby games to fall back on, Donkey Kong. Sonic really is kind of that Sega mascot. I know things like Alex Kidd and whatever, Altered Beast and whatever tried, but Sonic really is Sega, even to this day. And it really does start from that first game. That being said, Sonic 1, it's fine, but I don't think anybody's going to confuse it for the best game in the franchise, which I will go over. Now, how do I discuss Sonic as a game? I'm going to do sort of a way of like Mega Man. When I did Mega Man, I went stage by stage. I'm going to do a similar thing here. There were 6 stages, or 6 zones, and I'm kind of going to rank them. I didn't do this for Mega Man, but I think I'm going to do this here because the Sonic stages are more emblematic of everything that Sonic is, because when you get into a stage, you feel that you're in a stage. Mega Man, he has all of his other stuff, all of his other things he can do. Vertical stages, jumping around, shooting things. There are gimmicks to stages. Sonic he's in a stage, he inhabits the stage. The stage is centered around his speed, or lack thereof, in certain cases. So I'm going to kind of grade them on personal preference, based on stage design, how it looks, how it operates, the music, because the music is also a huge thing, much like a Mega Man or Mario game, and then the boss design. And when you talk about bosses, you talk about Robotnik or Eggman. I'm going to switch back and forth because I just do that. But for me, it was always Robotnik. I mean, I'm born in the US, that's how it's going to be. But if I say Eggman, don't hold it against me. I'm not gonna say otherwise. But when I do have to talk about it, every boss is Robotnik. It's a unique, cool feature. Rather than fighting different bosses all the time, you're just fighting different machinations of Robotnik stuff. You're basically doing the Dr. Wily fight every single time, just in a different variation, which is cool. And then later on, you get the final boss, and it's just like, oh shit, this is actually pretty fucking hard. And that comes down to the ring mechanic. Then they give away the rings, and it's, oh, now you actually have to try hard because you're going to die if you don't. But as stated, I'm going to rank these piece by piece. But before I do that, I do want to talk about Sonic and Eggman, because you can't have one without the other. Sonic is a goof. Sonic is a dork. Sonic is a dweeb. Sonic inhabits the 90s. Even more so now than anything else. Whether you do, whether you go with Jaleel White, whether you go with the adventure era voice actor, or in most recent times Roger Craig Smith, they all feel the same. I mean, Ben Schwartz to an extent goes more kid-like in the movies, so he gets more dramatic beats, but at the same time, he's still Sonic. You don't really go against the grain. He's a jerk. He's an immature prick. He's just there to have a good time, and he's also there to save things. He has all these visuals, and the cool thing is, of those first 3 games, the visual flair of seeing him stare at the camera and tap his toe, the visual flair of seeing him, kind of wander, like, not in the first game, but when he would jump near an edge and then kind of, bleh, those little animations do make an impact. I don't think even Mario had those. I don't think Mega Man had those. Mega Man had, like, scrunch up against the edge and hang off the edge, but I don't think he had, flying off the screen or whatever feel. So Sonic always felt like he was your insert and giving you, like, I'm just having a good time, or, oh shit, no, I'm not, because there's spikes. He would always have those moments. He was a very visual character, an extension of his speed. And even with that first game being as rough as it was, he inhabits the role of the immature character that's just running and gunning, and oh shit, there's a wall. Oh shit, there's a spike. Oh shit, there's a thing. He inhabits his world about as well as any character does. And then Eggman. Say what you will about Eggman / Robotnik. He is the most determined I've ever seen. Dr. Wily has nothing on this guy, because he gets beat every single time. and he is outmatched every single time. But for some reason, he just keeps on going. So, yes, while he does share, similarities with Dr. Wily, Robotnik is just... He owns the scenery. And that extends to the movies, sure. Jim Carrey, absolutely, a great part of the movies. I don't think the movies would have succeeded without him. But whether you're talking about the original shows, and I think, again, the Saturday morning cartoons had him more like a Dr. Claw. I'll get you next time, Sonic, or whatever, that kind of character. It was cool because it was a different style. You had a different style of character, but he's always been determined. His motivation's always been, I'm taking over Mobius. You don't need much more than that. But his Machiavellian charisma is always just on display. Whether he's in the original games or he gets more voice acted later, there's always him owning the scenery because Sonic is a bit of a jerk. So you need something to balance that out. And Robotnik, Eggman has always been a goofy foil, but he's committed if nothing else. Which is why I cosplay him sometimes. You should check out my Twitter. I've cosplayed as him. But let's get to the meat of this review before I keep trailing on about how great Robotnik is. And we start, as we should, with Green Hill Zone. Because Green Hill Zone is Sonic the Hedgehog. It's not always called Green Hill. It's sometimes called Emerald Hill, called Green Hill. It's called Green Hill Zone. Every game since then has had some sort of version of Green Hill Zone. The stacked brown and orange blocks and the greenery and the gorgeous. I'm thinking of Sonic Mania and how they managed to just recreate the backgrounds but gave it a lot like zip lines and other crazy stuff. But even in the original game, seeing those loop-de-loops, seeing the color of the background, almost like a beach landscape, even though it's not a beach, just the glistening of the water, going through all these caves and loops and seeing all these up and down, the momentum at display in Green Hill is just fascinating. And it's a great starting level because while not every level fits the rampant momentum, Green Hill always embodies that. It gives you this freedom. It gives you this just wondrous spectacle that you're always going to feel when you boot up a game. So they always make the first level the easy one, and they want you to feel like you're going fast. Yeah, it has some death pits and spikes and shit, but it's never going to be that difficult, which goes into the boss. The boss is just a big fucking wrecking ball. I do appreciate in most Robotnik situations that the bosses themselves are just kind of there. They're not difficult bosses. Sometimes they'll have a unique mechanic or two, but you'll see it right away. You just hit him and he's just done, So him just being a swinging wrecking ball and having to dodge him and then smack him, it's emblematic of Green Hill. The music is just amazing, whether you hear it in a remix or you just hear that original Green Hill. It's just majestic. I know I work at Lego, and Green Hill Zone was ported into an actual Lego set. And every time I was building on that Lego set, I felt everything that original 6 or 7 year old me was feeling when I played this game. Everything about Green Hill works. And if you were to guess what I would put as my number one zone, I mean, it's not even a contest. Green Hill is the best zone in the original Sonic game. Is it my favorite zone of all time? No, but it's certainly going to be one of the toughest ones to beat. So, as far as stage design, obviously number one. Music grade, number one. Green Hill Zone, you hear Green Hill Zone, you think Sonic. There's nothing... I mean, there are other great songs from Sonic, but that one is the Sonic theme. As far as bosses, simple, does the job. I don't think he's that great of a boss, but just because he's the first one, he gets a little bit of leeway. So I put him at like 2nd out of 6. But then we go to Marble Zone, and things grind to a halt. Unfortunately, the momentum and the fun that was had in this zone replaced by a bunch of slow platforming and a lot of instant death, like columns and spikes. They were going for like a Greek architecture or weird cave system. It's all like ugly purples and kind of bleh. There was a vibrancy in Green Hill Zone that's missing in Marble because you're going in caves, you're riding platforms that are stuck in instant death pits or fire pits. It has some cool ideas at play, like changing switches and doing a lot of fire stuff. But when you're going from, oh my god, I'm going fast and I'm almost not dying because it's super easy, going through all these weird cave systems over and over and over in Marble Zone doesn't feel as good. It just goes against what Sonic is supposed to be. I know that's more of a Game Grumps criticism than anything else. Like, Aaron hates Marble Zone and shit. That's where I'm getting most of this from. But I agree. I agree because Sonic is supposed to go fast. You have to have some obstacles, but at the same time, if you're not feeling that rush of adrenaline, you're not playing any different platformer game than anything else. If you wanted to do that sort of game, you could do that sort of game, but Sonic is built on momentum, and if he doesn't have it, you're in trouble. And I'm not saying Marble Zone's the worst, but it's certainly up there. And a lot of the issues that are plaguing this one end up plaguing a later level too. So Marble ends with Robotnik having this like fire hose, fire drain thing. You jump over a pit to the other side before he just hits you with fire, and then you just smack him. Again, you're not expecting Robotnik to have crazy designs or nothing. Don't expect anything super unique from Robotnik bosses. It's more of a, do you have enough rings? Do you have enough smarts to get through this level? Good, you're fine. You know. And then we get to Spring Yard Zone. I think, oh, actually no. Let's get to the rankings first. I was going to talk about Spring Yard Zone. I was excited. But stage design, 5th. Music, I don't like the music. I like the cool, darker cave theme, but in the realm of a Sonic song, like a Sonic song, it doesn't really fit great. So if I was to rank it, I would just say, nah, just put it 6th. And then the boss, it's there, it's 5th. So Marble Zone is just a meh. It's a downgrade in almost every level to Green Hill. And any level that does that, you know, just claustrophobic cave system doesn't really excite me. And then you get to Spring Yard Zone, which is a bit of a step back into the good domain. I'm not as big on Spring Yard Zone as other people, but I understand what they were going for. It's still got a lot of those like weird elevator platforms where you go and then it shifts down and then you go to the next spot and it shifts back up and you go back to the next one and you swing through. It's a lot of bumper mechanics, and I think this succeeds better in something like Casino Night Zone in the second game. But as an idea of just bouncing around and just figuring out where the fuck you're going and just, oh, I hit a bumper. Oh, I hit a bumper. Oh, God, I hit a bumper. Oh, shit, an enemy. There's a lot of cool stuff at play, and then the music is driving you to get going. The music is there to give you this just nice amusement park feel. Like you can bounce around and just have fun because you got 10 minutes to get through a level. So even though Spring Yard isn't my favorite, it still kind of gives you some of that fun back, which was missing in Marble Zone until you get to the boss. I hate this boss. I'm not a fan of instant death pits. I'm just not. And his whole thing is instant death pits. You take part of the platform away, and then you have to find your footing. It reminds me of oh god, what was it? It wasn't. I think it was Dracula X, because Super Castlevania 4 was more straightforward. I think it was Dracula X, where you fight Dracula. You normally fight Dracula like you normally do, the fireballs and shit, but everything is an instant death pit, and you have to climb on a pit and survive and guide your footing. It's a cool mechanic in theory, but in execution, it's just annoying because Robotnik himself is not beating you. It's you misplaced your footing, you die. That's why I don't like death pits. I will give Sonic Mania and some other games credit where they've recently made it to where, oh god, okay, if there is an instant death pit or a drowning spot, we'll let you know that they're there. They're kind of minimized the effect of, oh god, we have to kill you because we're trying to kill you and extend our lifetime. I get what they're going for with the instant death pits thing and the spike thing, but when you make a boss completely surrounded by it, it doesn't make for it exciting, and it more is frustrating than anything else. It doesn't feel like I've... And besides, Robotnik doesn't do anything other than change the field. So his mechanic is he's not beating you, he's forcing you to beat yourself. So I'm fine with Spring Yard Zone to an extent. Stage design, second. It's really free-flowing, really fun, I like it. The bumpers are done better in other levels, but it's still like, oh my god, I'm having fun. That's what Sonic should be. The music, great music. Amusement park theme music. I love remixes of this. The song in and of itself is not Green Hill good, but it's still fun. And the boss takes a bit of a dip just because instant death pits fucking annoy me. Personal preference, sue me. And then we get to Labyrinth. Fucking hell. Okay. How do I want to bring this one up? Underwater levels in a Sonic game suck complete donkey dick. This one even more so. There are some underwater levels, like Underwater Ruins in 2. For some reason, Carnival Zone. I think in 3 it's more... Well, no, Hydra City. Or Hydrocity, however you want to pronounce it. Hydra City's fine. But what really sucks about Labyrinth Zone is it takes everything that you hate about Marble Zone and the lack of momentum, and it makes you stay underwater the whole time. So you're claustrophobic and you're trying to find these switches to open up the zone, but you're still trying to get your fucking air, because that Sonic drowning music is the fucking bane of all existence. Whoever created that created an iconic and horrifying little piece of music. It's more horrifying than any sound you've ever heard in any game ever. The Sonic drowning music, I've heard it said, is like the best alarm clock because you want it to stop. It's the best music to get you going because you just want it to stop. Because everything about it screams panic. And not even panic. It's more like you actually are suffering a panic attack because you just want it to stop. Sonic is not meant for underwater. He's slow. He's claustrophobic. The game is punishing you for staying underwater. And then you have all these like rotating spike maces things. That's kind of the big environmental hazard in Labyrinth is you're trying to jump out of the water and then you get hit by a spike you're not expecting. Or you're jumping into a spike, or you're getting crushed by a platform or something like that. Labyrinth Zone is Marble Zone, but made worse. And as if that weren't bad enough, they take an idea that sounds good in theory, a chase sequence. This is like the only time I've ever seen Robotnik in a chase sequence. But again, the worst part about it, and I saw this bear it out in a sort of a randomizer situation, where if you're stuck and you don't have enough rings to survive the chase sequence, you make one wrong jump, you die. Because you can't get back up because of the rising water. It takes everything that you hate about water levels and it makes it even more hectic because you're trying to get your way out of Labyrinth. Again, a cool idea in theory, but in practice ends up making Labyrinth Zone even more insufferable because you just want to leave. And I don't know how many people got out of Labyrinth Zone. I've beaten it, but I hated doing it. And it's never been one of my favorites. I think when you have Hydra City or Hydrocity, when you have Aquatic Ruin Zone, you have your water segments, but it's still a momentum-based area. It's sort of doable, sort of livable, and it's not as frustrating because it's focused on water, but you don't spend as much time in the water. And of course, in Sonic 3, you have the bubble shield, which alleviate some of the problem. Because when you get in water, you just want to get the fuck out. And this is the same thing in Chemical Plant Zone to a smaller degree, is you just want to get the fuck out of the water. You don't even want to be in it. So the fact that you're stuck in a maze with the water, with bad mechanics and platforming, just makes this insufferable. The music is somewhat decent. I like the beach kind of cool, like, you know, just it's kind of catchy. More so than Marble Zone. That's about the best I could say. Is the music is its own unique feel. It's kind of a beach vibe, even though you're in a cave. But everything else about Labyrinth Zone sucks. And I don't know anybody who's ever liked Labyrinth Zone. Or if they have, it's been fairly rare. So, as you can imagine, my grades for this level suck. Stage design 6. Boss grade 6. Music grade 5. If the music was in a better stage, if this was designed with a lot more momentum and a lot less claustrophobia, maybe it would have been good. But at least we end on better notes. Like the first, or the crappy stages are more in the middle of the game, thank God. Because Starlight Zone's nice. It's not perfect. It's got its own issues. I think it focuses too much on, like, where you are in the levels. But Starlight Zone, I remember most for being in Wayne's World. The first movie, there was a arcade commercial on a TV, and they were advertising the arcade for one of the main characters, and they had Sonic and the Starlight Zone in that. I'll never forget Starlight Zone because it was in that movie. Mostly because I never get through Labyrinth Zone to ever play the fucking thing. But I have. And I do enjoy the aesthetic, because the higher up you go in the level, the safer you are. And I know that tends to be the general gist of things. Don't go in the lower paths. Always try to go in the upper paths to stave it off. But this even more so. This has a lot of death pits in the city portion. So the higher up you go, the more in kind of the stars and the space, the floating platforms, the greenish, like almost like a space station platform feel. And you got a lot of bumpers and a lot of like springs, and it's fun. But when you get stuck near the bottom and you make a wrong move, there's a lot of like death pit spots, and there's a lot of like hit a platform and then it descends, or hit a platform and then it ascends. And if you go in the wrong spot, it opens up at the wrong time and Sonic gets plunged into a fucking death pit. So if you keep yourself to the top, it's less frustrating, which is why I'm kind of like torn between this level. I want to like it, but I'm also kind of like, I don't know. That being said, I do enjoy the boss. This is actually my favorite boss in the game because there's two different ways of beating him. Because they have these seesaws, and Robotnik is dropping these spike balls, these exploding spike balls. But if you're lucky, Sonic himself can get launched into the air and hit Robotnik himself. So you've got two different ways of beating him, and it's not all that difficult. And again, I think I like Robotnik when he himself is trying to kill you, but he can also lay traps for you. So you are responsible for beating Robotnik either via your luck or your skill, or just you as Sonic beating him up. So this gives you a couple of options on how to beat him. So I've always liked Starlight Zone quite a bit. Stage grade, the city portions really frustrate me, but I still think the allure of the stage, especially not being Labyrinth Zone, helps quite a bit. I'd put it at a 3. Music grade is a 4. It's there, it's fun, but it's not going to win any awards. But the boss grade is probably the most fun, just because, again, these bosses are meant to be simple. You're supposed to know the mechanic right away as soon as you see it, but it also gives you multiple options on how to proceed. You don't have to use the mines to beat him. You can use Sonic to do it, and I always appreciated that. And then we get to Scrap Brain. I've always remembered this song mostly because it has this weird drumming effect in the intro portion. It's like it's not even in part of the drums. It's like its own separate like file, like it's overlaid on the file. Check it out. Sometimes you'll hear the Scrap Brain theme, and once they get through the main riff, they go over top of it. They layer it over top of it. It's always been something that I've like remembered. It's a weird thing to remember, but more so than the stage. Because Scrap Brain is the industrial level. I'm not like into the industrial stages much. Like Chemical Plant Zone's one thing, but Metropolis, it's fine. I've never been big on it. Scrap Brain Zone, I've never been big on it. I think I'm more partial to something like Launch Base, or even like Flying Battery Zone 1 rather than Scrap Brain. It's a lot of wonky like gears and go in here and do the thing. There's always there's also a thing where you kind of zigzag in, and there's this push, like this grate that's trying to push you against a wall and crush you, but you go underneath it and you keep going in a zigzag. Again, there's more of the death pits because it's the final stage, but then it goes and fucks it up. It tries to be Labyrinth Zone again. So you face off against the Robotnik for a second, and then he just dumps you in a big purple-pink version of Labyrinth Zone. It's one stage, but it's everything you hate about Labyrinth Zone again, and I don't want to be in Labyrinth Zone, so it's fucking annoying. But the final boss is neat. Rather than fight you in a machine, a pod, Robotnik does this thing where he fits himself in one of these 4 smashing pods. But then he also has these electric currents that try to smack you. So you don't have any rings. So the tension is super tight because you could die via the smash, or you can die via the electric current because you get smacked. It seems cheap to pull the final boss to do that, but it's not so hard that you can't survive it. And the idea is that you're supposed to predict which of the pods that Robotnik is going to be in. And then if you're lucky to not get smacked and you're lucky to be in the same spot, you could smack him once or twice and then you repeat. It's a cool boss idea. It's not going to win any awards. It's not like, Death Egg. It's not running away from Death Egg. It's not Death Egg Robot with the spike hands and you got to avoid the spike hands, But it's still fairly unique in its design, because Robotnik himself is just in a pod trying to smash you. So I give him some credit. But as far as Scrap Brain Zone goes, it's not my favorite, but it's fine. Stage design 4, just a mechanical, industrial level. It's not anything I'm too jazzed about. The music has some uniqueness, as I mentioned, so I'm okay with it. I do like it. I put it 3rd. And the boss, nothing spectacular, but for a final boss, it's still kind of a heightened sense of dread because you die in multiple fashions if you get hit once. So it's certainly final boss worthy. And I put it at 4th. So that's the last thing I do want to mention is the special stages. You have to win. You have to get the Chaos Emeralds to get the good ending, which is everybody's happy, everybody's nice, and Robotnik's not laughing at you at the end. So the idea is to get through these special stages, get through 7 special stages, get the 7 stones. It's one of the more frustrating aspects of Sonic 1, where the special stages dump Sonic into the environment and you have to kind of pinball your way around. You don't really have a lot of control, because you're constantly changing the direction. If you fall in one bad spot, you get hit with the end zone goal. The idea is to kind of like tumble dry your way down a pit, like a plinko ball or something, or a pachinko ball, into a zone, knock these barriers, and then hit the Chaos Emerald. But if you hit the sidewalls too much, they turn into goals. If you hit the end zone, you're done. You don't have as much control over it as you do in Sonic 2 or 3. So it's not the most fun of things. It's a cool idea, but it kind of goes against what Sonic is, and it fits more in line with what Sonic Spinball would be, and it's fine. But let's go over the I put in the grades of these anyway. Let's get back to that. So, as I said, I was ranking these. Stage design, Green Hill Zone, Spring Yard Zone, Starlight, Scrap Brain, Marble Zone, and Labyrinth. Music, Green Hill Zone, Spring Yard, Scrap Brain, Starlight, Labyrinth, and Marble. And boss ranking, Starlight, Green Hill, Spring Yard, Scrap Brain, Marble, and Labyrinth. So you can already kind of see a trend. Overall, Green Hill Zone easily number one. It was not even close. Spring Yard is fine, but I have issues with it. But that's number two, mostly because it's well designed momentum wise. Starlight Zone to an extent at number three, and then you get Scrap Brain, Marble, and of course Labyrinth bringing up the rear. What do I like about the game? Just the momentum of the good zones. The idea that a lot of zones are just quick, free-flowing, easy to go. The music is lovely. Even some of the worst music of the lists are some of the most fun. And I really respond to stuff like Green Hill and Spring Yard, even Labyrinth to an extent. I'm not a big fan of Labyrinth Zone, but I still have a fondness for the music. The sound team, the design of the songs are really, really fun. I'm a huge believer in the songs themselves. Let's see. And I do like the bosses. It sounds like a strange thing to say, to like the bosses when they're so simple. But I think when you're trying to get through a zone and you're greeted with, "Oh, hey, this is just a sort of exam." But sometimes bosses get way too difficult for their own good, especially in stuff like action games. But for platformers, you kind of don't want that. Like Mario has done a good job of making them fairly simple. They follow the Mario mechanic. They try not to throw too much shit at you. They give you one or two different mechanics, and then they give you the means to beat them. And outside of the frustrating things like the death hits or the chase sequences, I think that Robotnik always coming after you is a nice touch, and that's always fun. Negatives, this is the game that doesn't have the spin dash, and that makes a big difference. It makes a very, very unfortunate big difference. Trying to get through that game and not have a spin dash sucks really bad. I'm not a fan of trying to replay this when you're so used to spin dash and in some cases drop dash in some of the more recent games. So you just have to use kind of like momentum from going back and forth to get you through it. It's more particular in something like Spring Yard Zone when you get stuck behind a bumper. But every scene and every stage in this game, other than the ones where you're kind of stuck and claustrophobic, force you into the spin dash situation. So despite having a lot of momentum, you have to run very fast, and you have to always be cognizant of how can you get through a loop fast enough or go up a hill if you don't have a spring. Labyrinth and Marble Zones, they're just not Sonic. They just don't work, you know? I think that other games are much better at not doing that unless it's a specific instance or a specific section. They don't force you into a claustrophobic setting and keep you there for an entire stage. They do it partially. And even the water sections, they focus on the momentum of getting your ass out of the water rather than it being a thing. So Labyrinth and Marble Zones are bleh. And of course, the drowning music. I will hate Sonic forever because they've invented that fucking drowning music. So, no. It's the worst thing. It's the worst thing ever. I hate that drowning music so much. But, still, at the end of the day, it's Sonic the Hedgehog. And way back when, this was one of the gold standards. Sonic has been up and down and all around for 30 years. But those first few years when they couldn't miss, it was something of legend. Mario, Zelda, Kirby, Metroid, to an extent, have always kind of, in most cases, stayed the course. Sonic's always been up and down, but those first 3 games were just magic. So obviously, would I recommend Sonic to people? Of course I would. If you've never played a Sonic game, would I recommend Sonic 1? Maybe not. But if you want to experience it, it's a decent enough game. I would say Sonic 2 or 3, more so than Sonic 1, but it still has something to offer. It still gives you a glimpse into that time period when Sonic was king of everything. Saturday morning cartoons, all of the marketing and merchandise, all the gaming. He was everywhere. Mario, so much more now than Sonic, is like the video game thing. But back then, Sonic was still there. And he's still, especially now that the movies are such a big hit, still up there as an icon. You see Sonic, you know what you're getting. Games, not so much. But as far as Sonic the character, the iconography, yes. Sonic is Sonic. Sonic was the 90s. Sonic is gotta go fast guy. And there was something special about Sonic. And there always going to be something special, for better or for worse. But that'll do it for me. And I want to thank everybody for surviving through what I felt was one of the tougher ones to do. Because I was sick. You can definitely hear it now. But let's do a run through of my schedule going forward. Next week is Love After World Domination. Next week after that, Soul Blazer. And starting in October, we have The Rising of Shield Hero Season 2, or How to Kill a Franchise in One Season. October 10th, I have my eyes set on this one, and I'm sure you guys will too. Kingdom Hearts 1. And I will just say this now. I will be very charitable to Kingdom Hearts 1. If I ever get to Kingdom Hearts 2 or any other games, no. No. But if you're wondering if I'm going to stay positive, yeah, I'll stay positive for Kingdom Hearts, the first one anyway. Then we get into our Halloween schedule. October 17th will be a double bill. It will be Hellsing, the original OVA series, and Hellsing Ultimate. I like Hellsing, but it has some problems. October 24th, Silent Hill 2. We're actually going to go into a horror game for once. Yes, I've played horror games. I don't play them all that often, but I have, and I've played Silent Hill 2, and I love it. And then October 31st, Ghost Stories. And Ghost Stories is unique, and I'm specifically talking about the dub version. But if you've heard of Ghost Stories, the anime, you know what you're in for. And oh my god, I want to rewatch that at some point. But we are still full for the next 2 months. I have a lot of stuff to do. But again, thank you guys so much for sticking with me despite my cold. Hopefully by the next time I record stuff for Phoenix Wright or for Somnium Files or for another podcast, I won't be sick as a fucking dog. But thank you guys so much for watching. Citizen Strife, signing off.